Hey guys, I'm back. So today I wanted to do my favorites video. So this is gonna be just some of my all-time favorite books or authors. This isn't going to be all the books that I've ever read that I liked a lot. I just don't will be here forever if I did all of them. And plus I don't have a lot of the books anymore because most of the time once I read a book I get rid of them. So unless I know that I am going to read it again because it's just that amazing. And so the ones that I have here are ones that are either on my Kindle, so obviously it's always going to be there, or they're books that I just have to own because I will read again because they are that amazing. So I'm just gonna get right into them. So I wanted to do favorites video just to give you guys an idea about the books that I like and that are my personal favorites, to give you guys any recommendations or maybe a segue into what to start reading if you want to start getting into adult books. My first book that I'm going to share with you doesn't need any explanation. It just doesn't. I know you guys all know this. And unfortunately, this is the only one of these books that I have with me. The other ones are at my parents' house in a different state. So I just don't have the room to carry books around with me. I moved across states. I've moved to different places. So I just happen to have this one book with me. My parents have all of the others. My number one favorite ever, Harry Potter. My favorite in the series is actually the fifth book. But like I said, this is the only one I have. The whole series is at my parents'. So the only reason I have this one is because I've only read the seventh Harry Potter book once. I know. Shoot me. I want to read the whole series again. I don't really remember a lot that happens in the seventh book. All the other books I've read too many times to count, but this one I just, for some reason, only read it once, and then I got busy reading other books, and I never got a chance to read it again. And I want to pick it up and read it, but I kind of want to wait until I read the whole series all over again, but I don't have access to them right now. And I carry this one with me because this is actually kind of like a second copy, because when I used to go up from the fifth, for the fifth, sixth, and seventh books, I went to the Harry Potter release party at Barnes & Noble. If you're old enough, then you'll know what I'm talking about. If not, it was a midnight release for the Harry Potter books at Barnes & Noble the day that they could start selling the books. And there was lines out the door of Barnes & Noble to come in and buy them and be the first ones to get them. For that release in particular, they had a special edition Harry Potter books with J.K. Rowling's signature on the top of it, and it had a slip sleeve or a series with 1 to 7 books or 1 to the first 3 books or whatever. It comes in a little sleeve. That was how it is, and the box is really nice and fancy, and when you take the book out of the box, it doesn't say Harry Potter or anything on it. It's just a really cool cover. I will show you guys my Harry Potter collection when I get back to my parents, because I have a lot more than what you guys would think that there is even out there and available. So I'm not going to go into it because I want to surprise you guys, but I will be showing you guys my collection when I can get back there, which the soonest that I know for sure is going to be June when I go back. You had to pre-order those special signature edition books, and I ordered it for the 5th, 6th, and I also ordered it for the 7th book, but for some reason Barnes & Noble screwed up. They did not have my name in the system. So when I went in to get my special edition, they only had a limited number, so if you didn't sign up on early enough, then you didn't get them. So I had signed up for the special edition 6-7 months in advance, but somehow they lost my information, and they didn't have a reserved copy for me. So everybody who lined up got a normal copy of the book. And if you had signed up for the special edition, you got the special edition. Luckily, by the end of the night, there was only 2 signed copies left that were spoken for. People had put in a reservation, just like I did, for the signed copies. But Barnes & Noble told me because they had screwed up that they gave people a week. If they didn't pick their signed copies up within a week, then I could have one of them. and they would give me a discounted rate because they didn't have, obviously, it available. So because we drove all the way there, I bought this copy, this edition, and I didn't, because I honestly didn't know if I was going to get the signed copy. I was kind of really upset that they didn't have my name because I knew I had reserved, and if I didn't get it, then that was going to be it, and I wasn't going to get one. But luckily, they called me a week later, like they said, and they had one copy left. The person reserved the signed special copy. They never picked it up. So I got really lucky with that, so we drove down to Barnes & Noble real fast and picked it up, and I got to take it home, and I was discounted, so I was happy with that. And so this is kind of like the extra copy of Harry Potter, because this is matching all my other books in hardcover because it's the original published copy, but my signed special edition copy that is like my baby, my treasure, is at home in my bookshelf in my parents' house, like put away. I don't touch that copy. So these copies, I do have all signed copies as well as the original copies of 3 of the books. So the signed copies are like my special edition, do not touch. Those are on my shelf. Those are not moving copies, and these copies are my copies that are for reading, because if they get trashed because I read them so much, I can always just get a new copy. The signed copies are not easy to find, so those are like my special collection, do not touch. So this one, because this is my reading copy, I have this one with me, but again, I still haven't read it, and I've been carrying it from out of state to house, so I'm gonna get on that. Anyway, that was a long tangent. Sorry guys, this is gonna be a long video. So, Harry Potter, 5th one is my favorite. I'm not going to get into it, it's pretty self-explanatory. You guys know what Harry Potter's about. My favorite book series of all time. Just, this is really what got me into I liked books before and I read before Harry Potter, but this is what really kept me into it, and this was a book that I just drooled over because Harry Potter is so amazing. That's all I need to say. So all the other books I'm going to talk about are adult books, and those are books that I like, and I will tell you why, and I'll go into the order and stuff of what I like. But just so you guys can get an idea, if you're really into Harry Potter but you want to find more adult books that you might like, these are some recommendations I'll be giving you, because if Harry Potter's my favorite, I like these other books that are all adult. You'll probably like them too, based on these. So the next book, my second favorite book of all time, I have a story about this. So my teacher told me in 8th grade about a classic, because I had pretty much read almost a lot of the books on my bookshelves at home. My parents, we actually have a library in my house. My whole family, not really my mom, but my dad, me and my brother were all big readers. We have a library in our house. We each had our own books we each had our own designated bookshelves in the library. And like in 8th grade, we had a special, I don't know if this is common in schools, but we had special designated reading class. In 8th grade, we would spend, I don't remember the class, half an hour, 45 minutes in class just reading. And I actually really enjoyed that because I had so much time to read, plus I read at home recreationally. I went through a lot of my books. My teacher also had a bookshelf at school, but it was really small. But I had gone through all of my books, and I asked her for any recommendations. You know, I said, I don't have any more books at home. I read them all. Can you give me any recommendations? She told me about a classic, and I was a little nervous at first because I had tried reading classics. I don't even remember. I tried reading Sword in the Stone. I didn't really like that. But I was in 8th grade, mind you. Keep that in mind. I did read Jaws. I liked that. I had tried reading Jane Austen. I didn't like that. I still don't like her. I tried reading classics. I tried reading Charles Dickens. I didn't really like him, but now that I'm older, I know that I can give them a shot and possibly like them. But anyway, I had tried reading classics, and I did not like them. I was not able to get into them. So my teacher was like, I have this classic. I want you to try it. And I was really, really adamant on not doing it. And I was actually complaining and fighting with her. No, I hate classics. I don't want to read it. I don't like classics. People didn't know how to write back then. Boring, right? I don't want to do it. But my idea of classics was way back in Victorian era and like Shakespeare and stuff like that, along with Jane Austen and everything else. So my teacher told me, just give it 100 pages. If you don't like it within 100 pages, you can stop reading it. I won't bug you to read it. So I was like, all right, I'll read 100 pages. I could not put that book down. It didn't not even take me 100 pages to get to it, and it's still, I read the book in 8th grade. It's still my second favorite book today that I've ever read. That's how amazing this book was. I am indebted to her forever for recommending this book to me, because I don't think I ever would have read it. I don't think I ever would have found it if she hadn't recommended it. And I liked it so much that when we had gone to Salt Lake City with my parents for the Olympics, I had borrowed the book from her again after I read it, and I had my dad read the book, because that's how in love with the book I was, and my dad loved it just as much as I did. And we have a picture of him sitting like this on the train reading the book, the copy of the book that my teacher had loaned me. And on the plane he was reading it, on the train from where we got off to, we had gotten public transit to the Olympics, he was reading it. Like, my dad was reading it all the time. He would not put it down. He loved it as much as I did. So now that I've built up all that hype, just remember, it's a classic, but it is amazing. It is Watership Down by Richard Adams, and you can see it's pretty thick. I had another copy, originally the same copy that my teacher had owned, like the same cover, same edition. It was a trade paperback, so I'm not a big fan of those, but I read that book so much I ran it ragged. The cover was falling out, the pages were ripped, and I mean, I think I got water on it at some point. It was bad. So I finally just recycled it, and I bought a new copy, and I like this one a lot better because I had to have it on my shelf. I don't usually read books more than once, because the way I look at things is there's so many books out there. I don't want to waste the time reading books that I've already read when there's so many more out there to be discovered, because I'll never be able to read every single book that's out there in my lifetime. So why would I waste some of my life reading books that I've already read? But some of the books, like Harry Potter, like this, are so amazing, I can't help but read them more than once. Particularly if I'm in a reading slump and I want to read something that I know I'm going to love, I turn to this. It's actually an animated film, but like a cartoon, but it's horrible. I tried watching it, I could not even get through the thing. It doesn't do the book justice at all. So it's about rabbits, and when the teacher was explaining to me, she had told me that, and it's kind of deceiving, Watership Down. I thought that was something about battle, like the Navy, and maybe something about Pearl Harbor or something. All the ships went down in the water. Battleships were sunk, or Navy boats were sunk, something. I thought it was something to do with boats, water, ships, because of the name. But Watership Down is actually the warren that the rabbits live on. Even though there's rabbits on the cover, the name is deceiving. And it's hard to explain what this book is about, because it doesn't really do it justice. When I explain it, it just sounds stupid, because it's about rabbits and how they are forced out of their home. Wild rabbits are forced out of their home, and they go on a journey to find a new warren. They get into trouble. They find other rabbits who try and kick them out. Some of them are killed. Some of them find new friends. They carry them. They go along with them. In the whole book, they search for their home, their new home. And that's pretty much what it's about. And it doesn't sound interesting. I hate explaining this book to people, even though it's my second favorite book ever, because it does kind of sound, it's about rabbits. So what? That's the reaction I've had a lot of the times, and I completely agree and totally understand, because I had that same reaction when my teacher was explaining it to me. Well, it's about rabbits, and that's all I can really tell you, because it doesn't really sound interesting. I was like, well, then I don't want to read it. She convinced me, read 100 pages. That's it. I promise I won't bug you anymore. And I couldn't put it down. So I don't really have anything to say other than, if you haven't read it and you don't like classics, because I don't really like classics, this is one that you have to start with, because you should hopefully fall in love with it. The writing style is really nice. It's not written in a Victorian era or like 20th century type of way. It's actually written pretty like nice. Like the English is easy for us to understand. It is written really well, really concise. The English is really nice. It doesn't read like a classic at all. The way that this guy writes is, the imagery is amazing. Yeah, I just want you guys to read this. I'm gonna tell you what she told me. Just read 100 pages. If you don't like it by the first 100 pages, you probably won't like it, so don't worry about reading anymore. But if you can read the first 100 pages, you will most likely get hooked and you will not want to put it down. And this book is 476 pages. So, yes, please. This is one book. If there's ever any book you ever needed to read in your lifetime, it is this. And even if you don't like rabbits, even if you might think it's boring to read about rabbits, please, just try. That's all I can say. Just try. It's amazing. It's one of the only classics that I actually like that I've ever read. This is completely different than those two books. This one might actually be something that's kind of difficult for some of you to get through. Not because of the way it's written, but because of the subject matter. It's kind of really difficult subject matter to deal with. That is my third favorite book ever. Is The Kindness of Strangers by Katrina Kittle. And I actually picked this up on a whim. I used to have a used bookstore in my near my hometown. I would pick up a lot of books, even that I never even heard of, just because they were so cheap, because everything was a great deal. And this is one I read the back of. It just sounded awesome, and I picked it up on a whim. Never heard anything about it. Didn't know the author other than what the back said. And it's my third favorite book. I love it. I had ended up reading the book, getting rid of it, just like I always do. I ended up having to buy it again. I actually rebought it again recently. Last year, I rebought the book. And I read this book 7 or 8 years ago, probably. Let me just read the back to you. It's so hard to explain. A young widow raising 2 boys, Sarah Layden is struggling to keep her family together, but when a shocking revelation rips apart the family of her closest friend, Sarah finds herself welcoming yet another troubled young boy into her already tumultuous life. Jordan, a quiet, reclusive elementary school classmate of Sarah's son Danny, has survived a terrible ordeal. By agreeing to become Jordan's foster mother, Sarah will be forced to question the things she has long believed, and as the delicate threads that bind their family begin to unravel, all the Laydens will have to face difficult truths about themselves and one another, and discover the power of love necessary to forgive and heal. So she takes in her best friend's kid, and then she has to get him back to living a normal life, and it just slowly reveals in the book what happened to the kid, why he has to go into foster care, and how that affects his life and his relationships. And it's just it's because of what happens in the book and what happens to the family. It can be a hard book to get through. Like, I think that this one might have actually brought tears to my eyes, because it's one of those subject matters that if you can get through the book, it's amazing, but the book might be hard to get through because it is so emotional, so hard to read. A lot of times people want to read about happy stuff. They don't want to read about bad things that happen. So if you can get through the book, I would recommend this. It's not nonfiction, but it could be. The stuff that happens in this book is stuff that happens all the time to people, to kids, to family, to people just all across the world every day. So it's a fictional story about a fictional family, but the subject matter is stuff that is true, that could actually happen, that does actually happen, which is what makes it harder. Another one of my favorite books I picked up on a whim because it sounded good, and it, again, one of my favorite books, The Shadow of the Wind by Carlos Ruiz Zafón. And I actually have only read it once, a long time ago. And this is another book I actually just picked up 3 or 4 months ago. I read when I was in college, 2007 or 8, I read this book. Loved it. One of the best books I ever read. But again, I got rid of the book because I didn't think I'd ever read it again. And lately I've been thinking about it, could not get it off my mind. So I found a copy and I picked it up again just a few months ago. And I'm hoping to reread it again because that's how amazing it is. It was Barcelona in 1945, and a boy finds a book in a bookstore, and it intrigues him. And the book was called The Shadow of the Wind, and he was so intrigued by the book that he goes on a mission to research other things about that author, because he's like, oh, I wonder what else this author has written, because this is an amazing book. And when the boy goes to search for information about the author, he can't find anything. Like, nothing seems to exist. Nobody has ever heard of this person. It's like he can't find anybody who's ever heard of them. Like, he can't find any birth certificates. He doesn't know where they were from. When he even like looks for the name of the book, nobody even can find the book, The Shadow of the Wind. No one's ever heard of it. It's like there was one copy of the book by an unknown author, and that was it. Like, they were wiped off the face of the planet. Finally, the boy learns about the author, and he finds out more than he was hoping to find. He pretty much uncovers a conspiracy that related to this author in the book, and he finds himself in trouble because he is digging, and there are certain people who are trying to cover up the conspiracy that don't want him digging around and finding this book for reasons that they explain, but I'm not going to tell you about. This is a good book, and it actually ended on a good note. I was kind of like, it was one of those books, like, I kind of wanted to know what happened at the end, like, is there more? But it wasn't one of those, like, oh my gosh, I gotta read the next one. I didn't even know that there was a next one because of the way that it ended on, but apparently it's a series of 3 books. I have the second book. I have not read yet. I don't own the third, but I don't know if they're going to be as good as this one. I have to read this one before I read the next one because it's been so long. It's a really good book, and I recommend that you guys read it because the action, the suspense that goes on in this, it keeps you at the tip of your toes. So if you like mystery thriller books, it's really good. See my recommendations video, I talked about getting books that are New York Times bestseller. New York Times bestseller. So it definitely lives up to its name. One of the best books ever. Sorry, this video is long, so I'm just going to try and speed through the next ones. Another one is Night by Elie Wiesel. I actually just read this book in January. This is one of the books on my list to read. This is about the Holocaust. I've already done a review on this, so I'm just going to really quickly. This is about the author, Elie Wiesel, and he was a survivor of the Holocaust. He was in there when he was, I believe, I don't remember now, 13 or 14. He was a young teenager when they were taken away in the concentration camps, and his whole family, he watched his father die in the concentration camp a couple weeks before they were actually liberated. So that was really hard for him because he knew if his father had just held on a couple more weeks, he would have been saved. And it's a really short book, so it's really easy to get through. And I'm just fascinated with the Holocaust. I just love reading books about the Holocaust. Even though it's like a horrible time in history, I think that might be why I like it, because the memory of these people need to be kept alive. It's something that we can never let happen again, and it's so sad and so heart-wrenching, and it just fascinates me how somebody could do that, get away with it for so long. Somebody could be evil enough to do all that. It is 115 pages, so it's really quick. I was able to breeze through it. It's really, really sad, but really good. And obviously, because he wrote the book himself, it's his account, you know that he survived it. He got through it, but he talks about the stuff he witnessed, the stuff he had to go through, just how hard it was, how hard the Holocaust was, as if we don't already know that. But this is a good account. One of my, now, even though I just read it, January, it's one of my favorite books. So that's that. If you want to know more, you can go and check out my review on it. The last individual book that I have for you. Again, these aren't all of my favorite books. I just don't have the time to talk about them all. Is Before I Go to Sleep. This was on my January reading list, and I finished it. And it was kind of slow. It's a New York Times bestseller. It's about a female who got into an accident, and every time she goes to sleep, her memory gets erased. So she's an amnesiac, and she wakes up, she can remember her memories, any memories that she makes throughout the day. So if she wakes up at 8 o'clock, she can remember at 8 o'clock in the morning, when she goes to bed, she can still remember what she did at 8 o'clock in the morning. But as soon as she goes to sleep, her body refreshes itself. It's like a blank slate. Sometimes she wakes up thinking she's a teenager and she's really in her late 30s. So sometimes she thinks she's 20 years old. Her memories are random. Sometimes she'll remember something that had happened in the past. Sometimes she doesn't. She keeps a diary to remember stuff that happened to her. So because she's seeing a doctor and the doctor is helping her get her memories back. But it's a thriller because what happens to her, how she lost her memory, what her husband tells her happened. It's just about her trying to recover her memories, but the stuff that happens to her along the way is really suspenseful. It keeps you on your toes. Again, it's another mystery thriller because you know some of the stuff that happened to her, but you don't know the whole pieces. She finds out that her husband has been lying to her about some stuff, and when she confronts him about it, he says it was because he didn't want to hurt her, because the truth is actually more painful than the lies that he was telling. But it becomes something much, much bigger than if she could have ever thought. She finally finds out about her past and her history, and she learns about herself in the end. But the journey that she takes to get there is amazing. It was kind of slow to start off with, but it progresses. I gave it a shot because I had heard so many good things about it. Even though I was bored a little bit at the beginning, like I said, I pushed through because I really wanted to give it a shot, and I ended up falling in love with the book. It's, again, one of my favorite books. If you want to read a thriller about an amnesiac, pick that one up. So these next two I randomly just picked up. So these ones are favorite authors, not favorite books, because for this particular author, there's so many books of his that I have not read. I have those only on my shelf. All the other books that I have, I actually am collecting this author's books, and even if I've read them, I'm not getting rid of them because I've spent so long collecting them. And I will show you the books again when I go back to California, back to my parents' house. All the books that I've read of this author, including my favorite books, are back home at my parents'. The books that I have not read of him, I have with me so that I can read them, and then when I go back to California, if I read any before that, I will take them back and keep them on my parents' bookshelf, because I know I won't read those books again for a while. So my parents can hold on to them until I am buying my own house and I'm settled in, and I know I'm not going to move. I don't want to lose the books in transit, so I have the books that I haven't read. So I honestly can't say whether this book is good or not, but I've read so many books by this author, I can say that he's one of my favorite authors. Stephen King. And this one is Carrie. I watched the new movie. It's really good, but I haven't read the book yet, which is surprising because it's like his most famous one. My favorite book of his is Dreamcatcher. My second favorite of his is Misery. That one I actually did have here with me, but I had my mother-in-law, when she came to visit, she lives in another country, I had her read Joyland by Stephen King, even though I haven't read that one yet. She didn't like it because she'd never read any Stephen King, and that was a brand new book of his, and she kind of picked it up and was like, "Oh, I don't really like Stephen King." And I was like, "No, I want you to like Stephen King. You need to read a book of his that's amazing." Apparently Joyland has so many characters it's hard to keep track of, which that is a big thing of Stephen King. He likes to do that, but I wanted her to see the good side of him, so I let her take Misery home with her on the plane so she could read it. And she loved Misery, so I have to buy myself another copy because now she has that copy. That was one book that I had actually read that I was able to recommend to her. I'm sure that this one is good too, but I can't speak for it because I don't know. So this isn't one I would tell people if I want them to like Stephen King. Stephen King, one of my favorite authors. Oh, he's a horror writer. Pretty sure you all know that. I think only one book I've read of his that I don't like. I didn't really like Pet Sematary, but almost every other book of his I've read, I've loved. But he's one of those authors that it's really hard to read a whole bunch of his books at once. I can read maybe 2 or 3 books at a stretch, and then I have to put them down because his writing style is really unique, and it takes a little bit of getting used to, and it's just you get burned out on him really easy, which is why I do have so many books of his. I probably have more books of his that I haven't read than books that I have, just because I can't read him for a long period of time. So, favorite author, if you like horror, if you want to give horror a shot, I would recommend picking him up. And Dreamcatcher is one of my favorites, but that is not one that I would recommend starting off with, because that is another one where there's a lot of characters. You have to get used to his writing style before you can jump into that book. I read a bunch of books of his before I read Dreamcatcher, and by that time I was used to his writing style. I knew that he liked to introduce a whole bunch of characters, talk about them. Sometimes he'll introduce a character once and never speak of them ever again until the very end of the book when they become important again. It takes a little bit of getting used to. One that I always tell people to read is Misery. That one, if to start off with, is probably the best book. There are a handful of characters. You get to know all their names. You get to know their personalities. You actually grow with them. You can feel stuff for them. The writing style is really good of his, and it doesn't get complicated. So that's a good book. Last but not least, because this video is already very long, is another one of my favorite authors. I had picked up her book, Perfect Match. It sounded good on the back. I picked it up and I fell in love with the book. And just like The Boy in the Shadow of the Wind, I said, this is an amazing author. I want to see what else she's written so that I can try and find her books. Every single one of her books I've read, I have fallen in love with. And she's written a lot. 17 books, I think. 19 books, something like that. I've read all of her books except the one that she's co-written with her daughter, which is very recent, and then her newest book prior to that I haven't read yet either. And that first book of hers that I read that made me want to go and find more, that's still my favorite book of hers. But this is the one that I just happened to grab off my shelf. I actually have a couple because, unlike Stephen King, even though I like her, there's only a few books of hers that I will read again, and once that time comes, I will pick them up. I just picked up Sing You Home by Jodi Picoult. I'm noticing that she's popping up on quite a lot of booktubers' favorites list, or books that they've hauled. They're starting to get into this author, but I've been reading her for several years. Like I said, I've read all of her books except the last two. I really like her because she writes about a controversial subject matters. For those of you who don't know, she wrote My Sister's Keeper, which became a really famous movie. She became a test tube baby, and she was born only to give her sister parts. Her sister has cancer, so she needs bone marrow transplants, she needs blood, she needs working kidneys, liver, stuff like that. She was genetically engineered to be the same blood type, the same match, bone marrow match as her cancerous sister, so that she could keep her alive. The sister pretty much files for emancipation because she doesn't want to be a chopping board for her sister anymore, and she feels like she doesn't have a good quality of life, so it's really controversial about whether she's going to win or not. Another book is about an autistic kid who was accused of committing a crime, and the court is trying to figure out, can he be responsible? He's autistic. He doesn't really know. He doesn't really have the capacity to know right from wrong, and they were trying to determine whether the kid could be held responsible for the crime that they say that he committed, and he tries to prove to the court that he's innocent. There's a lot of books that are like really hard-hitting subject matters that can be controversial and that can offend people because it might. There's one about gay marriage, and there's an argument about whether the people should get married or not. Stuff like that. Most of her books have to deal with stuff like that. There's two sides to each one of the cases, and that's why they're so good, because you don't know which way it's going to go. Are they going to lean in favor of the person, or are they going to lean in favor of the court? Perfect Match is my favorite of hers, first one I read. That one is about a boy who claims that he was raped by his pastor. But there's a lot more to it than that. Finds out that he actually wasn't the one who raped him. Somebody else did, and they're trying to find out why the boy lied about being raped by this particular person. And then what they find out just completely blows the whole case wide open. If you like subjects like that, she might be an author to get into. And I would like My Sister's Keeper. That for some reason that was one of hers that was turned into a movie, but that's actually one of my least not least favorites, but that one wasn't one of her best. But it would be a good one to start with if you want to get into her. Perfect Match is also a good one. The Pact is also a good one. Sing You Home, this one is a good one. So pretty much any book of hers that you pick up is a good one. You can't really go wrong. 19 Minutes is another really, really good one. That's it. So those are my favorite authors, favorite books. Sorry, this video is extremely long. I just wanted to give you guys some ideas. So I am gonna go, and I will talk to you guys again soon, and expect to see another video. Let me know if you guys are interested in anything else, and I will talk to you guys soon. Bye.